Welcome to Bike Shows UK. This week we're at the 5th Knebworth Classic Bike Show in Hertfordshire. Here bikers turn up on everything from antique Brit iron to comparatively modern Jap stuff and Italian jobs. But they all have one thing in common. Their bikes are all classics and they've come along to compete for the best classic biking show. And one of the judges is classic bike guru Frank Westworth.
The classic bike scene started in the late 1970s when Classic Bike magazine was launched, and all of a sudden all those worn out old Brits that our dads used to ride suddenly became collectible, and I was there then back in the late 70s and I'm still here now. The emphasis is changing, the interest is getting much more on the older machines. Pre-war machines are getting very, very popular again, whereas we couldn't give them away 10 years ago. The Triumph Bonneville has been relaunched by Triumph Motorcycles over at Hinckley, which has meant that every Triumph is now worth a small fortune, and the parts are all available. It's really like modern motorcycling but with old motorbikes now. It's not such a culty thing as it was. I would say that 75-80% of the bikes that have come here today have been ridden in. 10 years ago they'd all have been trailered in, 5 years ago about half of them, but today the great majority come in under their own steam. Look at the smiles on their faces.
The main thrust of the day might be to find the best bike in the show, but there's all sorts of other stuff going on, including an auto jumble with traders from all over the country.
Go up to Scotland, Cornwall, Ireland, France, travel everywhere. If there's an auto jumble, get there, and that's it.
He too sees big changes in the classic bike scene.
But what is happening is the British stuff is getting far too expensive for the local public. And now the Japanese are getting classics. Everybody's going to the Japanese.
So, do you expect to get rid of a lot of this today?
No, not a lot. About 25%. That's about it.
This is all my stock. You know, there's 3 ton here. You know, so yeah, for a Sunday morning, it takes 3 hours to set it up. But it's normally shiny stuff, the outside stuff. It's not the internal engine stuff. It's all the chrome bits they want and stainless steel bits. I've been doing it so long and I know what the public want, and so I do a good display, and you do turn over some decent money sometimes.
Manufacture all the fasteners for the old bikes, you know, the cycle threads, you know, wheel spindles, bit of carb stuff. We specialise in Gold, BSA Gold Star. I'm set up at home, I work from home, got a workshop in the garden, and that's what I do. No overheads. You always bring the wrong thing, you know, people ask you for things and you bring them and then you never get asked for them again, then all of a sudden they start to sell again, you know, it's a lot of it's luck really, it's who wants your stuff.
And it's not just bits, you can buy a complete classic bike, a brand spanking new Royal Enfield.
Redditch finished in 1970, and then it was taken over by somebody in Madras in India, which are now producing them and exporting them here, which is amazing really. I think they're doing about 500 a year here. It's normally a slightly older generation, maybe my age group, which are nice people to deal with. They understand what they want. People that have had these in the 50s or 60s and they come back and say, oh, Enfield, back again. Is this a rebuilt bike? No, brand new bike with a warranty. It's the same as it was in the 50s and 60s with the addition of 12-volt electrics, which are nice and reliable to ride at night. The electric start as well.
Sometimes it's hard to imagine how this strange junk is ever going to find a new home. And sometimes the stuff doesn't have anything to do with motorcycling whatsoever. Still, there are plenty of lovely bikes to look at, some old and some very old indeed. But not all classics are British.
It's a 750 side valve, hand change, 6-volt, Army Harley, US Army. I've had this bike about a year and a bit. I've done a few bits and pieces on it to get it back to a military spec. I rode one 50 years ago when I was a kid. I suppose it's I'm just recapturing something. You've got a lot of concentration because you've got a foot clutch. It's like a tip forward and back clutch and a hand change. It's a comfortable ride. It doesn't do any more than 65. Well, that's what the plate says. Do not exceed 65 miles an hour. Caution. I'll do about 50, you know, steady plod.
It's a 1936 BSA. It's a B2, which is the overhead valve. The B1 was the side valve. I found it. Chap had it in a box for about 20 years. Wanted to get it out of the way. It's in his way in the garage. And I I managed to get it from him. Lots of bits missing, and when done nut and bolt rebuild, and there we are, there's your results. You have to learn to read traffic. You have to realise that the people are faster than you, and you just treat the roads for what they are. They're a highway. You just take care.
Yeah, some Douglas Mark IV Sports. It's been sympathetically restored, i.e. frame straightening, fork straightening, because of the impacts that we used to have. But I intend to respray it, really go to town on it before I reach my sell-by date. Performance is adequate, brakes inadequate, but we achieve round about 70 to the gallon from them, so that's the bonus.
That's 1949 BSA. Previously I think it might have been, it's come from abroad in a logbook. It said it's come from abroad, HMS Customs, it's got her over in a logbook. Her Majesty's Forces, so I've got to do some research on it. I suspect it might have been in the forces abroad. I don't know where. I come by it about 3 years ago and I just tidied it up a little bit, and I use it to go to work on and do a bit of green lane on it and just come to these dues with it. What's it like to ride? It's okay, it's slow, vibrates, but it's alright, it's fun if you don't want to go very fast. Lorne comes out with a Harley.
I only come out when it's like this. I'm a fair weather rider.
I ride in all weathers.
Well, what can I tell you about it? I don't know what to say about it. It's a Harley-Davidson 883 Sportster. Yeah, and this is my first run out this year.
It's a 1949 Vincent Rapide. I got it. I was too ashamed to use it, because everything was torn. Paintwork was multicoloured. It was very rusty. But it had only been owned by two brothers, and so really, it's very low mileage. I couldn't face riding the bike the way it was, but what I did, I bought it without taking it home and showing the missus, took it all apart, resprayed it, had all the chrome work redone and everything like that, bits of stainless, but the actual engine was perfect. It's just where the bloke, he just didn't believe in polish, I suppose. And I rebuilt it, took 7 weeks. The very first time I fired it up, I went to Holland, and everyone reckons I was mad, but it made it there, made it back, no hassle at all, well pleased with it. Complete different way of riding a bike. They're so different from Triumph BSAs and things like that, what I'm used to, so leisurely to drive, a very nice bike. Take a bit of starting, but once you've got the knack of, firing one up, they're no problem. You don't look at a rev counter, that's one good thing. They're so lazy. 85, 90, cruising, it can go faster, but against that, I respect the engine, and I know that if anything did go wrong, you're talking of a lot of money, so ordinary driving around motorway traffic and everything like that, it'll keep up with any of that.
But some classics aren't really all that old.
It's a 1972 Kawasaki Z1. It's totally original, never been restored. It's the best bike here. But I've been told in America, some people will do a couple of thousand miles, stick them in their cellar. Obviously that's been in California or somewhere and it's just not seen the weather. They were fast in their day. I mean, they're still fast now, still do 130 mile an hour. Not that I'd like to go that fast on it. Acceleration, you do a quarter of a mile in under 13 seconds, but you don't buy that sort of thing for that, do you? The brakes are crap, really bad. But as long as you ride within the limits of them, it's all right,
One of the biggest and most enthusiastic clubs devoted to a single mark, in fact, a single model, are the Suzuki GT750 owners, better known as the Kettle Club. They absolutely adore Suzuki's 1970s water-cooled two-strokes.
This is more of a social event, although it's a small show. We find a lot of the lads come around just for a meet, and Norfolk, Suffolk, we've got one from Manchester today. But it's just a nice little show. They'll probably be a bit more difficult to restore because obviously the parts are made in Japan and they're hard to get from Japan. A lot of it's deleted now. there's still a lot of old stock, and the reason for that is Suzuki used to always carry a big stock of spares as part of the franchising. So it turns up mainly from America now. So they're a bit harder than the Brits, but I've had British bikes before these, and they've just got a charisma. There's something about them that no other bike's got. They're unique in the sound. Other than Scots, they never made another two-stroke water-cooled, really. And most people who had them back in the 70s either had them or wanted them, and they were the R1s, the Fireblades, the quick bikes of their day. I know they're not that quick now, but in their day they were. I think the Brit boys realise now that we are the future, because they can't go on forever. If you look around, most people who ride the Brit bikes are getting older. We've got our day to come. We love the British bikes. We've never had a problem with them. They've had a bit of a problem with us in the past, Jap crap and all that, but we feel that, no, we don't feel, we're happy. We still get the little comments, but we're happy.
Well, all of these bikes could be best in show here at Knebworth, but what actually is the definition of a classic?
That is a can of worms, isn't it? That is a can of worms. All classic bikes are old bikes, unless they're Ducatis or Triumphs, but all old bikes aren't classics. We all know that, I think. I've been talking to my friends at the club nights about what constitutes a classic, and my own view is that if a motorcycle is worth rebuilding, in other words, if it's worth making as new again, worth spending on more than it ever is going to be worth, then it's a classic.
Well, as the first bikes arrive in the show ring for judging, that's about it for part one. But join us in part two, when we'll have all the winners and we'll have some daredevil stunting on classic bikes on the Wall of Death. Welcome back to Bike Shows UK. We're in Hertfordshire at the 5th Knebworth Classic Bike Show, where the judging is taking place to decide the best classics here on the day. Machines are divided into categories by age and model, with everything from plenty of lovely old British machinery to more modern machines from all over the world. Now, the judges are currently trying to decide which is the best Norton, and that was a prize that went to this absolutely gorgeous and completely original Commando.
It's a 1978 Mark III Commando, and I think it was probably one of the last ones ever built. I've got a suspicion it was built by the receivers after the factory closed, but I haven't been able to check the numbers yet to find out.
So it now goes forward to the best in show. How do you think it might do that?
Well, I don't know. I've got a sneaking suspicion that it might do well, because if it's the same judge who judged the Norton category, he actually admitted that he's got one of these himself. So we might be in with a shout.
Next class winner was this smart Velocette.
This is a 350 KSS, ex-Jeff Dodkin bike, built by Jeff Dodkin, who was the synonymous Velocette dealer. And it's actually photographed on the Velocette Millennium calendar on the November. And it's a very, very nice original bike. All right, it's girder forks, it's not a sprung frame, but surprisingly enough, it's quite reasonable to ride. Very light, and it's low, and yeah, it's a comfortable bike to ride. For somebody like me, I'm quite happy to poodle around the back roads at about 40, 50, that sort of mark. But I mean, if you've got on a nice road and you could open up, they'll do 70, 80, no problem. But I'm not looking at those sort of speeds. I haven't got it purely to show, I've got it to ride and enjoy. And my wife said, are you going to sell it? I said, well, I don't want to, but I said I'd like to be able to put it in the dining room up the other end of the table. That's where I'd like to put it. But I don't know that I can get agreement on that yet.
The bike's a 1967 G15 CS, 750 Norton engine in a AMC matchless frame, which they call hybrid, and it was produced at the later end of production for AMC. And I think in that year there was only a couple of bikes that were being produced by AMC, and that was one of them. And they're certainly unique as far as the Atlas engine, I'm told, in the Norton frame is very vibratory. But for some reason in the AMC frame, I think it loses its vibes, and it's quite a handleable, placid engine. So if anyone wants a hybrid, I suggest they go out and look for them. They are around.
Away from the relative calm of the show ring, there's dramatic classic bike action on the Wall of Death.
The Wall of Death started in 1929 in Great Britain. It's been travelling here every year since then. It's now 2004, so we've been going over 70 years. We have a drum which is 20 foot high and 40 feet in diameter, and we ride motorbikes along these perpendicular walls. The bikes are box standard machines. This machine that I'm sitting on here is a 1922 Indian Scout. This was built for the American police force, and we've used them on the Wall of Death since 1929. The riders are your normal, common old box garden lads and girls that have taken an interest in our way of lifestyle.
As the mighty Indians continue to roar around the wooden Wall of Death, we return to the calm of the show arena. Now, a classic bike isn't necessarily British or very old. Just look at this stunning 1979 Ducati 900.
This bike I've owned from new since about 1979, so I've had it quite a long time. And first 2 years we had it, it was our only means of transport. So through the summer, through the winters, I mean, that was it, that's what we used. So 24, 25 years later, it's still with us. And every year they have a great classic bike show here every year in Knebworth, so I've been coming for the last 2 or 3 years. It's the first time I've actually brought this to this show. And when I bought it back in 79, 80, it was a performance bike, and I mean, the Japanese bikes really did struggle, despite what the magazines might say, they did struggle to keep up with it. It could out-handle them, it could out-brake them, in many cases outperform them acceleration. But if you compare it to a modern bike, it's slow steering, it's a bit wheezy in getting up to the top end, even though it's pretty good nick, and the brakes just don't bear any comparison to a modern sports bike. Oh, it's funny, after all these years, it still gives me a kick to ride it. It's a great old Ducati from one of the early Bevels, and every day I take it out, it still gives me a grin. And despite the fact it's old and it doesn't perform like the modern bikes do, it's not even as civilised as the modern bikes, it's still a great ride, and it's still very enjoyable to ride. Well, having come here for many years, I think there is a certain bias towards British bikes, which is cool because, most of us are British bike owners as well. There may be a certain bias, but hey, it's just fun at the end of the day, right?
It's a 1972 H2. It's an American import, and it got best H2 in the club last year. I'm hoping to defend that title next month. I've had this bike about 2 years, and I've totally restored it. Although when I bought it, it was in pretty original state. Just needed a bit of TLC, bring it back to spec, and I took it all the bits and set about doing it. Performance is okay. I mean, it's a bit more thirsty than a modern bike, purely because that's the way it was designed. But at low speed, it tends to want to surge a bit. It likes the open road, and it likes to be whacked open, But, I've had several 750s, but the H2 is the shorter wheelbase, and this is where it all started from in the 750s. And it's a bit of a wheelie machine, got a bit of a reputation, a bit of a mad bike. And I just always wanted one, and I thought one day I will have the early 750. So I sold a few to get this one, I suppose. It's a more British orientated show, always has been. And they've got just as much right to be here as we have. I'm just glad these kind of shows are putting on things for the Japanese motorcycles. There's more of them about now. And people my age grew up with these, they didn't know the British stuff so much, and I grew up with these mad things.
There are plenty of winners at Knebworth. Best Norton, Best Matchless, Best Brit, Best Jap, Best Italian, Best Two-Stroke. but there can only be one best in show, and here it is.
I just went in, I thought there was nothing to lose, and obviously there wasn't. So I'm not a pot hunter as such, and I should probably never ever go in for a show again, but no, it's been good fun. My bike is 1970 A65L Lightning BSA. It's the last of this particular model. Just after this model they went into the infamous oil in the frame model, which everybody said was too tall. I've had it about 4 years. It's surprisingly good, really. I've got a modern Suzuki 600 Bandit that I use for the sort of longer distance runs, and this is very satisfying to run. It's a bit more vibratory. You can feel you're on a bike when it starts working hard, but it keeps up with modern traffic, no problem.
With the judging done, people start to leave, already looking forward to next year. But for the organiser, this is just one event in a very long summer.
I've been doing this now for 19 years. I've done around 550 shows in that time. Some very large, Alexandra Palace, 30,000 people. Some only attract a couple of hundred people, you know. And we do around 30 shows a year. We start on the 3rd of January and we carry on through to around the 5th of December each year. And we're out more or less 1 weekend, 3 weekends in 4 throughout the summer, throughout the year. The bike crowd are great. I've been here all day. I haven't had any hassle whatsoever, no complaints, no grumbles. The traders are easy to work with. The bike lads are great. They appreciate what you do for them. And really all they want to do is stand around and chat, look at each other's exhaust pipes, you know, that kind of thing. And they're great.
Well, that's it from the 5th Knebworth Classic Bike Show. See you next time.